Okay, so we're continuing with chapter 11. We're going to talk about dividends. So once the stock is sold, some companies choose to pay dividends. When you think about stock, there are really two ways investors make money on owning stock, or being a shareholder of a company. And the first way is stock price appreciation, which basically means I pay $50 a share, and in the future, maybe I can sell it for $70 a share. So I've made money in the fact that the company is now more valuable, hence my fractional share of ownership is also more valuable. All right. The other way that investors make money off stock is dividends. All right. And oftentimes it depends on the type of company. Mature companies typically pay dividends much more consistently than a growth company, right? And there are some companies that have never paid a dividend, right? But for those who do, dividends are a payment of cash. Usually it's always based on a per share amount, 50 cents per share or what have you, to the stockholders, right? And it's really a distribution of retained earnings. To pay a dividend, the company must have two things. They must have retained earnings that have not previously been paid out as a dividend, or actually you can use current period income as well, which really is part of retained earnings. Or you can, and you also have to have cash on hand, all right, to pay the dividend, because you're actually going to send checks out to the shareholders, to the stockholders. So when it comes to dividends, we've got three dates, right? Two of which we'll need to make journal entries on. The date of declaration. Now, the dividends come from the board, right? So the board of directors will declare a dividend, and usually it's just a chunk of money. So we're going to pay, $1 million in dividends, right? And then that's just divided up by the number of shares outstanding, all right? Now, the dividend goes to shareholders as of a date of record. And the date of record is always after the date of declaration. But all the date of record means is whoever owns the shares on that date is entitled to the dividend. All right. So if I sell my shares after the date of record, I'm still going to get a dividend check. And whoever purchased my shares would not get that dividend until the next dividend was declared sometime in the future. All right. And the date of payment is when the checks are actually sent to the stockholders. All right. So we'll journalize dividends, and we'll see the significance of these three dates. All right. And that's really the abstract part of dividends. So let's talk a little bit about preferred stock. All right. So preferred stock is like a hybrid security, and it's preferred because it's preferred because the preferred shareholders get paid their dividend first, and in many cases also participate in the same dividend as the common shareholders. And we'll work through a problem detailing this as well. Now, some differences. Preferred stock usually has no voting right, and that's because they have a preference. You're much more likely to get paid some cash if you hold preferred stock than you do common stock, right? So they usually don't have voting rights, and they have a stated dividend rate. That's not going to be meaningful until we get in and start working the problems, all right? There's an example here. I'm not going to talk through that, but we'll talk about cumulative versus non-cumulative. And for examples, I'm going to work a problem that I think does a better job of illustrating how this works. So preferred stock can be cumulative, which means the preferred shareholders are entitled to a dividend every year, whether it's paid or not. And if a company elects not to pay a dividend in a particular year, it rolls over to the next year, and it's said to be in arrears, right? And all it really means is that the company has to pay all the dividends in arrears plus the dividend for the current year before they can pay a dividend to any common stockholder. All right, so that's how cumulative works. And if you're a preferred shareholder, you want the dividend to be cumulative, because that means the company cannot avoid paying you a dividend. They can just delay the timing, but it cannot be avoided because they don't have the right to pay the common stockholders until the dividends in arrears are cleared. And we'll work through an example illustrating this. Non-cumulative means that if there's no dividends declared in a year, preferred shareholders just don't get their dividend for that year. All right. And the last terminology we need to know about preferred stock is participating versus non-participating. Participating means the dividends, the preferred stock also gets the same dividend that the common shareholders get on top of their preferred dividend. And non-participating means that you don't. You get your preferred dividend, but you don't participate in the common dividend. All right, so that's how that works. And we're going to work a few problems.